This is the TSG Multimedia podcast for February of 2021. We're sponsored this month by Soundtraxx, Podomatic, and the TSG Train Crew on Patreon. Thank you very much. I'm your host, John Abaticola, and it's the start of another month. I have news from January, a few updates on some of the upcoming programs, and something that'll seem a little unrelated until I explain why it isn't, and some great photos as well as a really cool video in our Catch of the Month segment. Before we get to all that, please remember to hit the thumbs up icon to register your support of what you're watching. It actually helps the channel become more visible to other viewers, and it lets me know that you appreciate what we're doing here. Comments are also always welcome, even if it's just to say, hey, thanks for the show. I really enjoyed it. Now let's go to our Soundtraxx Soundbyte for this month. Okay, so I have George dialed up here on my computer. Hello, George. Welcome back.
Howdy, John. Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. What do you have for us this month from Soundtraxx?
Well, this month, I don't really have any new announcements. We had a couple that we were ready to make, but unfortunately we had some parts delays, and so we're holding that announcement back. I know I kind of teased a little bit on it one of your last programs, but just say that we're working on it. We're trying to get it resolved, and I know the N-Scale guys will be really happy.
Oh, N-Scale.
So I know they'll be really happy. So we're looking at that, and then we've also got some other stuff that we are able to build. So we'll be getting those announcements coming up here probably in the next month or so. So I know we've got a lot going on with our engineering department. So I know your N-Scale viewers, I know we've had a lot of response. The TSU KN1, which is the decoder we have for this N-Scale F3, we talked about. This is the TSU KN1, and this is the drop-in decoder. Whoops, there's the camera. This is the KN1 drop-in decoder for the Kato N-Scale widebody. And these things have been doing really well. We're actually on having to build them. We're out of stock at the moment, but they'll be back on the shelf before the end of the week, and ready as we're recording this anyway. And so we'll be able to get those back out to everybody. So that's been really popular, really, really good.
Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you about that because I have a pair of Kato P42s. And I have a product that my friend Alvin Ho has developed that's like a motherboard for these things. And then I want to put one of those what is it?
KN1.
KN1. I want to put one of those into the other one. So I need to talk to you about maybe getting one of those. And dude, I still don't have my Keep Calm and Play with Trains shirt. What's up with that?
Oh, I guess we'll have to fix that on both accounts.
I'm going to blame you for that.
Sure, why not? Broad shoulders.
Just everything, blame George.
There you go. So what we'll do is we'll get that. We'll get you a KN1 decoder in your hands, and I'll rummage through and see if I have any shirts in the irregular pile for you.
Oh, right. It's going to have the hole on the bottom, right? It doesn't matter. Whether you put your head through it or the other end, it looks the same for me.
Yeah, there you go. So, but yeah, we'll take care of that for you, John. No worries. I also wanted to mention we do have some over the past summer. We did announce the 8-function versions of our TSU PNP and our TSU 21P NEM8s. Now these are the same virtual decoder, but with 8 functions. And so I have actually both of them here. This is our EMD-2 format. And so you can see that I've got the 6-function version right here. And you'll look at the part number. It's 885024. And our 8-function versions, to help identify them, you'll see the part number on this is 885824. And this is important because, we've been doing the Tsunami 2 for a little while now, and we've got a lot of people buying these decoders. But what's happened is with the 6-function and the 8-function versions on the shelf at the same time, they're virtually identical. The only difference is 2 lighting functions. So it doesn't make sense as a business to keep 2 decoders that are virtually the same and keep the product lines up. So the 6-function versions are eventually going to go away. And so this is why I wanted to bring this up, is because Now we're left with the TSU 8 function. So you'll see the 885-824. So this was spurred on because I had a call from a customer this week was saying that his retailer saw that 885013, the TSU P&P for the original EMD, was discontinued, and he was panicked because he thought we were discontinuing it. And I said, no, don't worry. We're not going to discontinue arguably our best-selling decoder without a replacement in hand. And so that's where this comes into play. So you'll see this 824 is just the same part number, but it's just the 824, so it has the designation for the 8 function. Now we have the same thing here for our 21P NEMs, and at this moment in time, I am fully stocked on all of the 6-function versions of the 21P NEMs. But at some point, as these diminish and go out, they will also be replaced with the 824. So you'll see, or the 8. So this one here you'll see is part number 885809. This is the 6-function version, and then you'll see the Tsunami 2 21P NEM 8 is 885809 as the subsequent part number. So we're not going to discontinue something that is very, very popular out from under anybody. So don't worry, we have solutions, but obviously we want to, not discontinue those. We want to use up the rest of the boards. And then once those are out, then we'll be exclusively the 8-function versions.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense to maintain both part numbers if one of them is that much better with 2 extra functions. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to use them, but they're there, right?
Exactly. So it just helps streamline the manufacturing process and helps us keep our costs down and also save space in the warehouse because we're not inventorying 2 sets of part numbers that are virtually identical.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's like an upgraded car, right?
Yeah.
If they're going to come out with a car that has more features on it, actually, it's a terrible analogy. Never mind.
Fair enough.
Because they do have more features. They just charge more for them.
Well, yeah. Now there is a small price difference, but it's negligible once you factor in the retailer discounts and the discounts we've offered here in the past as well.
Right. I usually wait till the end to ask about that, but so far we've been continuing the TSG 15 the whole time, like almost a year now. Have
we been really doing this for a year now?
Pretty close.
Wow. Man, time flies.
Yeah, I know, but you look forward to seeing me every month, so it's good.
Well, of course. You're my buddy. Yes, we'll go ahead and extend the TSG 15 at least one more month. I know we've had some discussions about changing it up a little bit. So make sure you use the TSG 15 in the month of February and make sure you get your 15% off. Again, also, we encourage you to check out the retailers for inventory as well.
Excellent. Now, I don't mean to be demanding or anything, but
never.
I don't intend to. Now, whether it comes out that way or not might be a different issue. But
fair enough.
The intention's not to be demanding. But one of the things that I've liked, and I've actually received from some feedback from people who like this, is when you give us your modeling tips. So I'm kind of curious about a modeling tip. I mean, you got your layout there. Is there anything you can show us or do that might be exciting and model-wise?
Maybe. Let me move the KN1 decoder here out of the way. And I've got a Mopac GP15 sitting right here. And it's just been sitting here idling while we've been talking. And so today what I wanted to show you is just how to implement braking and momentum into your operations. There's, when these decoders come shipped, they come without any momentum into there. So basically you get instant starts and stops whenever you adjust the throttle. And some people like that, and I'm going to cover that here during the discussion, that you can still have that and still have momentum and braking. But the benefit here is that when you add momentum, these locomotives are not small machines in the real world. They take quite a bit of energy to get moving and quite a bit of energy to get stopped. And so things don't always start and stop on a dime. So we have an adjustable momentum rate in CV3 for acceleration and CV4 for deceleration that can allow you to, for lack of a better term, delay the acceleration and take a little longer to simulate a heavier mass. Right. And then with the Tsunami 2, we actually have braking features that you can use the independent brakes and the automatic, and I'll explain those in a second. And those can work in conjunction or subtract away from the momentum rate so that you can use the brakes to stop your locomotive more quickly. Now, as I mentioned, there's the 2 braking systems. You have the automatic and the independent. And what do these mean? What do these words mean? Well, the independent brake is the name, as the name implies, the brakes on the locomotive when it's independent of a train. And so usually, let me grab a pointer here. Usually when you look down here on these trucks, you can see these brake shoes on the sides of the wheels. And those are the brakes from the independent. And so the way it works is the engineer will open a valve and it'll fill the cylinders that are usually located here on the top of the trucks. It'll fill those with air, and that air pressure opens the lever, and the lever applies the brake shoes onto the wheels of the car. So it stops the train independent of anything else. And that's what the air compressor is doing in the background, is the air compressor is monitoring the air pressure in these air tanks right here. And what that's doing is that is now maintaining the pressure so that the engineer has that air pressure at its disposal. Now, when we tie into a train, everybody's familiar with the air hoses that are connected between the freight cars. Now, this is what's called the automatic or the train brake. And the way this system works is it maintains an equalized pressure throughout the entire train, usually right around 95 pounds per square inch. Now, when the engineer has the brakes released, that 95 pounds is set through the air and the brake shoes are released off of the cars. Now, the reason it's called the automatic or the train brake is that the braking effort is distributed throughout the entire train.
Right.
And so therefore, instead of this locomotive having to stop the thousands of tons behind it, it can now distribute that braking effort. So each car can help contribute to the braking effort to slow that train down. Now, the reason it's called the automatic is if that train line breaks, and let's say the air pressure reduces, well, those brakes will now automatically be applied.
Yep, lock
and
it
so
up.
So the engineer in the cab will apply the brakes by reducing the air pressure, usually at 5 pound increments, a 5 pound set and then a 10 pound set. And what that does, it reduces the air pressure. So it gradually and with a little bit more pressure each time will apply braking effort so he can keep that train under control.
Right.
Now, the Missouri Pacific was interesting. I was talking to one of the old hoggers years ago, and he was telling me that the Mopac used what was called power braking. And power braking, what they would do is they would apply the locomotive into full notch 8 throttle. So those engines were pulling on the cars. And then they would set the brakes. And the brakes would then have the cars pulling back against the locomotive. The reason for this, and this is one of my favorite stories to tell, is what they would do is it would keep the couplers tight so that there was no slack and bouncing in the coupler. So that the guy in the caboose, aka the grade detector, would have a smooth ride, and he wasn't sitting there bucking back and forth with the cars as they're bouncing back and forth. So the idea was to keep the train stretched. Well, when we were developing the Tsunami 2, this was a lot of fun because being in on the ground floor and seeing all of this and knowing how all this works, because we had engineers on staff that were able to contribute to the operation of the decoder, but we also needed to keep it simple and easy to do for the model railroader. So the way we do it is the brakes are actually just an on-off application. And so you just apply the brakes or you can release it, but you can feather them on and off. And so what that does, it gives you the ability to be more of an engineer rather than trying to remember, wait, did I do 5 pounds or 10 pound set? I don't remember. Hold on, and pushing the buttons in incremental values. And so that's kind of why we decided to go that route. Plus, it also allows it to be backwards compatible with all of our current products and former products such as Soundcar, let me rephrase that. Our current products like Soundcar and our former products like the original Tsunami and so forth have those breaking in there. But again, it's on off. And so we decided to maintain that. So what I'm going to do for you today is I'm just going to do a quick little demonstration. We're going to run this locomotive. So as the first switch job out, the first thing I have to do is, of course, start up the locomotive. So we're going to press the F5. You're going to hear that low pressure alarm bell kick on. And then you're going to hear the prime mover starting up.
Yeah, it's quiet, but I can hear it.
Okay. Let me see if I can crank the volume up here a little bit, because I know I tend to have the volumes lower on my home layout.
Oh, there we go.
So that should have raised it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, of course, I'm going to turn on my headlight, and I'm going to set it up in the reverse direction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the independent. We're going to apply the automatic, and then we're going to pull the train out, and we're going to stop it. So we're just going to do this in a short period of time, just as a quick demonstration to see what you can get with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move in reverse here. So I'm going to turn on the bell, crank up the throttle. You can hear the prime mover notch up, and now I'm going to release the brake. And you can see that it doesn't jump to speed step 10, it's slowly accelerating. So now I can just feather the throttle here a little bit, and I can use the brakes to stop the locomotive and just couple on. So now I'm coupled, I'm going to change directions, and now what the engineers would do was they would have to prove they're coupled. So they're going to pull forward slightly. So I go speed step 1, release the brake. I can see that I'm coupled to my train, so I set the brakes, and now I bring the locomotive to a stop. So I'm at speed step 0, and my locomotive is stopped. Now, what you were hearing there, the brake squeal, is the independent brakes. Now I'm going to switch over to the automatic. And to do this, I'm going to activate F12. And F12 will tell the decoder when F12 is on, it's going to go into automatic train brake mode. But what you're also going to hear is you're going to hear the air compressor cycle and charge as it works to charge the train line. Remember, we have to maintain 95 pounds of pressure. So we're going to push the F12. Now you hear the diesel engine notch up, and you hear that compressor start cycling as it works to charge the train line. In the real world, this would normally take about 10 to 15 minutes. In model train time, it takes 30 seconds.
Depends on your fast clock.
Yes.
Got to remember.
Exactly. But on our decoder, we did 30 real seconds.
Oh, I see.
Now, one thing I did want to point out while we're waiting for this. Yeah. Well, one thing I want to point out while we're waiting for this to cycle here is that our algorithm for the air compressor sound is not just a random noisemaker. And so when you're using the brakes more frequently, of course, what's happening? Well, you're using the air. The air pressure is being depleted. So what happens? The compressor has to cycle on because the governor recognizes that, and it turns on. So when you use your brakes more frequently, you're going to hear the air compressor cycle more frequently. That's a unique feature of the Tsunami decoders to show how we put that extra level of realism into the operation.
Yeah.
So now I've coupled up to this train. We also have enabled the dynamic exhaust. You're going to hear this locomotive working harder as it starts to move. Now I'm going to start moving here at speed step 10, release the brakes. And you can kind of hear how it's still notching up because it's got this full train behind it. So now when I cut the throttle, and now I apply the brakes, instead of hearing the squealing, you're actually hearing the air retainers lead off.
Right.
And this is where, when partnered with a sound car throughout the train, gives a really cool effect because you hear the air reduction in the locomotive, but then you hear the squealing coming from the cars. So this is just a very, very quick overview. I know we're don't have a whole lot of time to go into all the details, but I will encourage you to try this out. There's various YouTube videos that we've put together on our Soundtraxx website and our Soundtraxx YouTube channel that will really help dive into the features of all of this decoder, how it works, and then if you have any questions, we're a phone call or an email away.
It's really cool. I don't think I realized how realistic you can make the trains behave with these decoders. I mean, I kind of knew in the back of my head because we've talked about it before, but seeing it demoed like this and knowing, because I actually was lucky enough to have the opportunity to run a GP15-1 coincidentally.
Oh, I'm jealous.
And I actually got to experience some of the things that you're talking about. I didn't run it with the train. I just ran it light, and it was a lot of fun. But I know about the train, the brake on the locomotive. What did you call it? The independent?
The independent and then the automatic.
Yeah, the independent. I know about that because I had to use it to stop. And it was, it actually made me want to do that for work. Like I would actually have fun running locomotives for work, I think. So it was kind of inspirational to watch you do that and go, oh yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's pretty cool. I don't know, maybe but I don't know about this. Do the other decoder manufacturers have that level of realistic control?
No, because this is where the extra level of having the engineers on staff, because they know how it works. And so all of this is interactive. It's not just a random noise generator. And that's what takes Soundtraxx and separates us apart, because we do try to make sure to give you the most realistic experience from either a rail fan perspective or an operator perspective, but still be able to make it easy and fun to use. I mean, there's a reason why we're two-time winners of Model Railroader's Reader's Choice Award for favorite sound decoder. And this is just one of the many examples.
It just seems to me like it's kind of the hardcore operator's choice, or it would be if they understand how the machines work in real life. That's pretty cool.
Well, and I believe that's true. And that's where I think a lot of people, we get too fixated on moving the cars around that, now with these decoders that can do that, now we can really expand the operations and make it more fun and more enjoyable, and especially more encompassing, because now, we're actually running the real locomotives as opposed to just, turning a knob on a power pack or a throttle. And one thing I did forget to mention was, for those of you guys that do like the instant starts and stops, function 14 by default is what's called a momentum override. And actually, let me rephrase that. It's called switching mode. And what it does is it overrides the momentum. And so you get that instant start and stop. But then it also takes your commanded speed step and cuts it into 1/2. And the reason for that is so that if you're trying to spot that boxcar lined up, if you have a little bit too much momentum, you may keep doing the just past it. And so this gives you that ability to have that, moving it very slow and then stop it instantly. And then that way you can do it. So that's why it's called switching mode. You disable function 14 and then all your momentum settings and braking come back.
Very cool. It's really neat because when you think about it, yeah, you can do all this really specific operations like the real thing. But if you're not into that, you can still just operate it like like guys who don't know all that stuff. So it works.
Absolutely.
For both. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's why they're all custom settings. And so you can adjust this for yourself. Now, I personally like a lot of momentum. So my acceleration rate is 150 out of 255. My deceleration is 225 out of 255.
Wow.
And so when I cut the throttle, it takes a while for those locomotives to come to a stop. But when I use the brakes, now that cuts that momentum rate down significantly. So I can actually stop the locomotive more quickly when I apply the brakes, the same thing it would do in the real world.
Right. I have friends that are into stuff like this, and we call it, and it's not a bad thing the way we use it. We call it geeking out. You geek out, George. You geek out on the operations, and having that ability is pretty cool.
So, absolutely. I have so much fun with it, and I enjoy really bringing it out and sharing it with everybody because, the only limitations are your own imagination and your own desires, and you can do anything you want. And our decoders are great because they pair with it well. They give you that flexibility that you can adjust it, and we're really excited about it. And I'll tell you, it's always fun when you get those people that see it for the first time and they go, wow, I didn't know that had that, or I've been looking for this, and they just didn't know where to look. And, now we deliver it to them. So it's always great to see that and fun to bring it to everybody.
Yeah. I get the impression that's one of the things that you enjoy in the hobby is giving people that aha moment and saying, yeah, you can actually do these cool things, even if you didn't know you could. I mean, I remember on some other shows that we've done in the past where you were showing steam stuff. You were going through those same kind of processes with the steam engine. So
yep,
it's not just
and
for
all these
diesels.
Yep, and all these braking features are in the steam decoders as well. So grid mention.
Yeah, cool. Well, we've probably gone longer than I expected to, but this is cool stuff though. And I geek out a little bit too. I'll have to admit it, but it's okay. That's part of it. If you're not doing what you like, you're not doing it right. That's what I think. And hobbies are here to enjoy and make your life more fun. So
exactly. That's awesome. And I've been working at Soundtraxx now for over 12 years, and I don't feel like I've worked a day in my life.
See what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of like what I do. I think we're kind of in the same boat. I love to share stuff that people don't get to see. You're doing something that you love. I think it's great. And I enjoy our talks every month. This is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, is there anything else or should we go?
No, I think we'll save it for next month, but we'll leave the teaser that hopefully next month we'll have some announcements and ready to share.
Sounds good. I really like announcements. So
myself included.
All right, George, thanks. And I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Take care. Thank you, guys.
All right.
All right. Thanks, George. If you like these segments that I do with George every month, please be sure to use the TSG 15 discount code they've been nice enough to provide to us when you place your order with them. It gets you 15% off, and it lets them know that you appreciate their sponsorship of this channel. And if you're not placing an order with them, it's okay. You can always just give them a quick call or send an email. Let them know that you enjoy the Soundtraxx Soundbyte segment on the TSG Multimedia podcast every month. I'd really appreciate that a lot, and it lets them know that they're sponsoring the right channel, right? So let's talk about what happened since I last came to you with a podcast. Because January was a little strange. We were on complete lockdown here, and I didn't get a lot of chances to get out and do anything, but I still managed to remain productive. On January 4th, I had a live call-in talk show with my friend Alvin from Salt Lake City. We talked with the best viewers on YouTube for about 2 hours. It was all about the best and worst of 2020, and I think we can finally put 2020 to rest. On January 8th, I received something that I ordered, and this is a little different and a bit of a tangent, so bear with me. I think a lot of you will appreciate this by the time I'm done telling you about it. So since we've been locked down most of the past year or so, I apparently have become a target for online advertisers who sell food items. I think it started with some beef jerky that I wanted to try when I saw it on Facebook on an ad like a year ago. Then I started getting more ads like for things like popcorn and peanuts and other foods like that. So you get the idea, right? Now I'll tell you something else. I love sunflower seeds. I also love to take them with me when I'm out rail fanning. So when an ad for something called South 40 sunflower seeds popped up on my Facebook feed one day, it got me curious. So I clicked on the ad just out of curiosity and found that this company produces large seeds, which is what I like the most. So I went to their website and I saw that they didn't really have any sample packs. And I sent a message to them that the seeds seemed pretty expensive for someone like me who just wanted to try them. So I got a pretty quick response with a discounted offer, and I really liked their approach. So I told them if the seeds were as good as promised, I would tell my audience about them. And I said I'd wear a shirt, right? Their shirt for a podcast if they sent it with the order. So you can probably figure out the rest of where this is going just based on the shirt that I'm wearing, right? Not only are these seeds the biggest I've had, and I mean the seed as well as the shell, but they also taste excellent. I thought that the shells were just going to be the big part, but the seeds inside are also bigger than regular seeds as well. And I think these are some of the best sunflower seeds that I've ever had. So when I wrote back to the guy on his Facebook page and told him that his company had a new fan in me, he offered to give my audience a chance to try the seeds with a discount. Now, he didn't really have to do that. And when he asked me what code to use on the website, I thought for about 2 seconds. And then I said, how about TSG 15? So not only will TSG 15 get you 15% off at Soundtraxx.com, but also at South40snacks.com as well. If you try these sunflower seeds, let me know if you like them. As one of my rail fanning staples, at least for those long days when you don't have time to stop for lunch, I'm planning to stay well stocked, especially once we're able to get out and travel freely like we did before COVID hit. So I want to thank South 40 Snacks for that offer and encourage you to try them. If you like sunflower seeds, I'm pretty sure you'll like these. Anyway, the jury's still out on which beef jerky is the best, but if I find one that's a clear winner, head and shoulders above the rest, I'll definitely let you know. Taking snacks like beef jerky and sunflower seeds on days when you're in remote places can really help tide you over until the end of the day. Just remember to also have enough water, because staying hydrated on those days is also really important, especially if you're eating salt. Anyway, on the 16th, we had a TSG Train Crew virtual hangout. That's where I invite our Patreon supporters to have a private meeting, and I'll usually interview a special guest. It's one of the perks of being on the train crew. That's what I call people who support my work here on YouTube, on Patreon. I call them the TSG Train Crew. Well, on this particular hangout, I invited Chris Brimley from ExactRail as my guest to talk about the model manufacturing business. Here's the funny thing. I recorded the whole thing on Skype, and then I found out later that the recording had no audio. So when I told Chris what had happened, he offered to redo it. So what I did was I invited him to go on live with me the following Wednesday when I had a live show scheduled, but I didn't have a guest yet. So that brings us to the 20th. That was the third Wednesday of the month. And as I just told you, I spent 2 hours with Chris talking about a lot of the things that we had discussed on the interview that previous weekend. It was a cool discussion, and a lot of people called in to ask some of the questions I see debated on social media, like why manufacturing companies use factories in China, for example. If you missed that show, it's worth going back to check it out. We even talked a little bit about the Hudson Terminal, which is the N-scale shelf layout that Chris built to represent a 1950s East Coast industrial freight terminal. We also did a layout tour about that video, which you're encouraged to look at if you have a chance. So the next day, I got this awesome calendar in the mail from my friend Michelle. It's John Crisanti's 2021 Railroads of Colorado calendar. John Crisanti is a very talented photographer who seems to know a lot of really excellent places to catch trains in Colorado. And I think that the calendar really demonstrates that. You can order one of these calendars for, I think it's $15 from the Colorado Model Railroad Museum's website, cmrm.org. If you go to that link and hit the shop tab and scroll down so you'll see the calendar, that's where you get it. So on the 22nd, there was an announcement from the NMRA Rails by the Bay Committee. That's the group that's putting together the National NMRA Convention for 2021 in my area. The announcement was that the in-person convention was canceled. Many of us suspected that this would end up being the case, but we remained cautiously optimistic because we knew that there was a backup plan, which is what I'm about to tell you about now. We haven't only planned for an in-person event. We've also been simultaneously creating a plan B, if you want to call it that, just in case the inevitable happened, which is the in-person convention not being able to take place. And so what I'm going to tell you is that there will be some form of a virtual convention. I'm not going to say too much here, but I can tell you that it probably won't be like anything else that you've seen so far in terms of virtual events regarding model railroads or the NMRA. I'm going to go a little out of order here and jump ahead to this last weekend real quick because it ties in with this announcement about the NMRA convention. The layout design and operations SIG meet that usually happens in person locally for me here took place virtually this past weekend, and I was asked to host 2 hours of panel discussion with a bunch of the layout owners who would have normally had their layouts open for that event. It was great fun because I knew most of them already, and they're great guys. Having done their layout tour videos of their layouts for the channel here is how I got to meet them. That SIG Meet event was also used as sort of a test bed for what we can develop for the NMRA National Convention that's going to happen that I was just talking about. By putting this virtual meet together, we learned a lot and got a ton of very great information about how to do a larger virtual convention. And I can tell you that I'm pretty excited about the things we're talking about doing. So, does it suck that we won't have an in-person convention again this year? It really does, but we'll do something that's going to be just as good. And I'll undoubtedly be talking about that as more information develops. So stay tuned. You might even want to subscribe just for that reason. Now to rewind back to the 24th, that was a Sunday when we had our monthly panel discussion. You know, the TSG Live Crew Lounge? This discussion was all about layout design, and it featured some pretty well-known model railroaders who had a ton of excellent information to share. If you've ever thought about building a layout, or if you're just interested in the design and construction of layouts, that is a TSG Live Crew Lounge episode that's worth revisiting. So as I'm recording this, it's before the final event of the month, which is when I go live with my friend John Wiley on a live call-in show. This is happening Thursday. As I'm recording, this is Tuesday. So right now I can't tell you what all we ended up discussing, but I can tell you, without having done it yet, that our plan is to talk about finding motivation. So whatever it ends up being or ended up being will be good, because John's a really heady and witty guy who's good at explaining stuff. That's why I invited him. Now, before I get too confused with the future and past tense of this segment that I'm trying to do, let's just move on to the upcoming program schedule. That'll be easier. On Friday, February 12th, we have a product spotlight. And then the next day, on Saturday, February 13th, it's another product spotlight. That's a little bit longer, and you'll see why when it happens. On Wednesday, February 17th, at 4 p.m. Pacific, we have a live call-in show with my guest co-host, Michelle Kempema. On Friday the 19th, it's N-Scale Friday. On the 20th, we're doing something different. It's called Model Railroading Live with Rob Spangler. This is a program that's still kind of under development, so I can't say too much about it, other than that Rob is a very talented modeler and that he has a great layout that I got to see when I was in SLC for the 2019 NMRA National Convention. It's definitely something that you'll want to catch if you can, and it's something new and something different. On the 21st at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, we have the TSG Live Crew Lounge, where we're going to talk about technology in model railroading. And then on the 26th, we have another product spotlight. On Saturday the 27th, it's the next episode of Model Railroading with Jack Burgess. And now for the catches of the month. TSG Train Crew member Brandon Bader sends in this photo of a southbound Norfolk Southern train on the Piedmont Division in Lula, Georgia. This next catch is actually a video that comes from Rowan Kinane in Tasmania, Australia. It's 4 DQ class narrow gauge locomotives working hard up the steep grade through Farrell. The DQ-class locomotives were brought to Tasmania from New Zealand in the mid-1990s. And the trains that used to run on this line were the mighty Garretts, no longer around. Here we see Paul Kruper's K27 making a test run past his iPad. This is an ON3 model. This is a photo sent in by Alvin Gilbert of a former SP caboose that's being used as a shoving platform on the UP local around town in Salt Lake City. This was taken on October 22nd of 2020. In this picture, Alvin shares the Salt Lake Garfield and Western Switcher locomotive DS12 as it's coming back to the yard after a long day of work. This was taken on August 27th of 2020 at 1000 West South Temple in Salt Lake City. Mitch Stack sends the following shots from Australia. In this shot, Locomotive 7A brings its train across the Monbulk Creek Trestle on the Puffing Billy Railway. This shot is Mitch's Roundhouse Sammy Robin cooling down after a run on his Garden Railroad. And in the last photo of this month, ex-Victorian Railways Consolidation J550 sits on display at the New G station. Thanks to everyone who shared this month. If you have a photo that you'd like to share, please email it to podcast@tsgmultimedia.com. Be sure you own the photo and let me know the whats, whens, and wheres of the shots you want to share. As always, I invite you to support the content you love by joining the TSG Train Crew on Patreon. You can find out more about that by visiting patreon.com/tsgmultimedia. It doesn't cost much, but it helps a lot when you add your support to the channel. Also, I'm going to start doing something a little different. I'm going to be monitoring the comments sections of all the videos for questions and interesting comments. So if you comment on videos, you may end up on something new that we're going to start next month called the comment or questions section. That's where I'll take your comments and provide my opinion about whatever you said, or if you have questions, I'll answer the questions. That way we don't have to do a separate video that's just questions and answers, because I don't know, that could get a little bit stale, I think. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you next time.